All you.
Thank you for the opportunity to present before you today. My name is Tim McGuire, President of QP Local 79, representing frontline workers delivering services in Toronto's communities. From our perspective, Toronto is a dynamic city with the potential to be the best city in the country to live, work, play, and raise a family. But the truth is we face incredible challenges that stop us from reaching that potential. We are the most unequal city in Canada with the highest concentration of working poor, and the numbers continue to rise. Too many people live in our city who just can't make ends meet. One of the core reasons is the lack of jobs, stable jobs, that make employment stable, so family lives are stable. We'll get back to that later. There have been some promises, some signals of hope with the poverty reduction strategy and other initiatives the city has taken leadership on, but we have to make sure that this budget matches those signals of hope. And I'm just going to go through a number of the pieces where we think the budget can be improved. On childcare, the Children's Services operating budget has been reduced by 1%, despite the need for the system to expand and provide more childcare spaces and subsidies. Shelter Housing and Support Administration, 2 drop-in warming centres for the homeless that are currently open 24/7 for the coldest months of the year, January and February, will not have the resources to continue unless the budget is changed to accommodate this life-saving service for the most vulnerable of Toronto's population. The city's commitment to achieve 90% occupancy in emergency shelters will not be met. Shelters will continue to be full up every night. Social Development and Financial Administration, the Toronto Youth and Employment Program, to reach and help, exists to outreach and help with youth at risk of violence and crime and poverty, is not yet funded, and it needs to be. Parks, Forestry and Recreation, there is no money in the budget to finish the job of expanding to 10 council-approved youth spaces. The last 3 are supposed to be completed this year, but there's nothing in the budget for that. So important to keep our youth engaged, and this is the central ask of youth around the city when the city was doing its Parks and Recreation review. Toronto Employment and Social Services, the program that started in 2015 to support single parents who face barriers accessing employment has been cut. There is no funding available in the 2016 budget to continue providing this critical support. I'm the president of QP Local 79. In order to hold my office, I have to have a position as a frontline worker in the City of Toronto. Mine was out of Employment and Social Services, and I know firsthand from not only single parents, but also newcomers, the difficulties in settling and getting over poverty issues. 37% of single-parent women, single-parent-led families are in poverty, and we need to ensure that we have to assist people out of poverty. The Board of Health, expanding the student nutrition program is part of a multi-year strategy to ensure children in Toronto have a healthy breakfast, is not included in the preliminary budget, and it needs to. What's happening to the city workforce? The members I represent delivering services in the 2016 budget? After years of promising to reduce gapping and vacancy levels, there is still over 2,500 unfilled positions in Toronto's workforce complement, according to the 2015 third quarter operating variance. That means city workers have fewer resources to deliver services to residents. Workers are forced to watch as programs are cancelled and service standards are lowered. It's not surprising that vacancies remain high. Divisions are forced to absorb additional costs while expanding programming. Consistently, divisions report that they are underspending their budgets by saving in salaries and benefits through vacancies. That's how they're hitting their city-imposed budget targets. We can see some of the details of the 26 budget on how staffing levels, gapping rates, and vacancies have a major impact on the delivery of city services. The complexities of communities needs are also increasing. Rising poverty, aging population, settlement issues, expanding city due to the newcomer settlement. These are issues that need to be addressed. I'll end it with the remark, as I said earlier, there is some hints of hope through the poverty reduction strategy. If the city is serious about tackling those issues and other issues to ensure that this is the best city in the country to live rather than the most equal, the city has to have a serious, more concentrated dialogue on revenue tools.
Thank you very much, Tim. Are there questions of the Deputy? Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Budget Chief. Thank you, Mr. McGuire, for your presentation. Just the question of revenue tools. Any thoughts on what might be a more appropriate direction, how we might initiate such a dialogue?
Well, I know there's groups that have given presentations. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives the other day had a piece here over a few hours to talk about revenue tools. I know the city manager presented late last year on the possibility of revenue tools in his presentation. So I think we have to get serious about what that means, and have a consultation process, and have that during this budget process as much as we possibly can, to make sure that we at least have a down payment on revenue tools that are currently allowed, and then let's have a serious discussion with the province. The province, I think, the critique has been the city hasn't taken care of its own house. So sure, we're taking care of our own house by selecting what the most appropriate revenue tool is, and have that dialogue with the province. Yes, we're taking care of our own house, but you need to assist us with whatever other revenue tool council in its wisdom thinks is the best.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll next for questions.
Thank you. Yes, your membership was vocally supportive. The last time we took a look at City of Toronto Act revenue tools. Now we're under considerable pressure, and really, I think you're right. Hints of hope, but sometime within this year, we've got to have that serious conversation. So the question is this: you've asked us to address gapping, and 2,500 of your members' positions are vacant. But we may have to spend some money. In order to get this done in a year, we may have to spend some money and have a consultant redo that original report that you were supportive of, because HST didn't exist then. So we need to know quickly, how can we implement, who would collect, all of that stuff. Would we be able to count on your members doing that work out in the community to explain why that needs to happen and happen now?
Sure, we would be at your service in doing that. We've been a partner on the poverty reduction strategy. We've been engaged in the revenue tools discussion, and we're happy to continue doing that. And I just want to make another comment about the 2,300 jobs. Those are jobs that could provide services to improve the city, but the key, the core, the best antidote to poverty is a good job.
Yeah.
So I'm not just talking about that from the perspective as I represent current workers for the city. Those are potential jobs for people in Toronto's communities, and they'll spend the money from that job in the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Outside councillors, Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Maguire, thank you for coming out. You mentioned off the top two critical issues that you see, one being growing inequality, the other was the lack of stable jobs.
Yes.
In this budget process, I just want to focus in on the notion of good, decent jobs and stable jobs. What are some of the measures that you think we could seek to address, be it in this budget process or on a go-forward basis, to address the jobs issue and good, decent jobs?
Right. So within the poverty reduction strategy is housed some strategies to start to deal with that. There's the living wage, so have a serious discussion about what the living wage means for the City of Toronto. The living wage discussion needs to happen. It's not just that, that everybody that currently works for the city that receives minimum wage or slightly more than minimum wage is going to go to the 1852 that's quoted, that's recommended, I think, by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. But it means a discussion about which jobs should be a living wage so people can spend that money in their communities and they have a decent standard of living with their families. There's also something called the Quality Job Assessment Tool to look at what does a good job look like. What are the hours of work? Are there minimum commitments to part-time workers? The city needs, not just for itself, but its agencies, its contractors, needs to move forward, and there's lots of discussions happening at the provincial level too in terms of the review of the Employment Standards Act. What does a good job look like, all right? And one of those is minimum commitment to hours of work for part-time workers. Currently, I've said this a number of times before, the shelter division in the City of Toronto has told our part-time members that they have to give 24/7 availability with zero commitment in return. That's not a stable job. That means you're becoming more and more vulnerable yourself while you're trying to assist Toronto's more vulnerable. So that job quality assessment tool, let's get on those discussions now. Let's commit that in 2016. We're going to sit down and look at what a living wage looks like for the City of Toronto, its agencies and its contractors, and let's make sure that we move forward on the quality job assessment tool so we can come to an understanding together, have a dialogue about what a good job means. 54 agencies 54 agencies, including the Board of Trade, recently wrote the city indicating that it's supportive of good jobs in terms of a poverty reduction strategy.
So the living wage and the job quality assessment tool coming out of the poverty reduction strategy,
Yeah.
so two pieces there. On the issue of gapping, you just spoke to it from a point of view of strengthening the economy, a high-wage economy being a stronger one. What about the impact of gapping on your members? I hear the impact on our economy, but what about on your members?
Yeah. So I want to be sure that, I want to be clear that I'm talking about not just our members, because that's how we're often portrayed, but we're talking about the health of Toronto's communities and the economy. But from our members, it means we're overworked, doing a lot more with less, and at some point there's health and safety implications for that, there's morale implications for that. We've been flatlining and cutting now for 15 years. And at some point, the service has to be seen to be the service level, implications for service level by less and less workers doing more and more.
And one final question. I just wanted to make sure I heard correctly, because it's been a big issue. You mentioned one of the things that the position of QP Local 79 to improve in the budget is the Shelter, Sport and Housing Division, the $416,000 required for the 2 cold weather drop-in centres. The position is you'd like to see those centres remain open and included in the budget. Is that correct?
Yes. And it's not, and I'm going to be clear, it's not, I don't know that those warming centres are not members. So I'm not talking about defending something that's provided by our members. I'm talking about something that's essential, that's so critical for in our weather. We don't always know what it's going to look like, but to have those warming centers open.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, very much. I don't see